Hi, so thank you for taking the time to let me interview you today. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and uh, your socioeconomic identity, kind of the background you come from?
Sure. My name is Beatrice Davidson. I grew up, was born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was kind of was raised with a family that was, I guess, middle class, so to say. Unfortunately, I felt kind of more like the poor friend in the group, so to say. Growing up, they always had money, and I was always the friend that had to be paid for a lot of things. And so, um, when given when comparing things, like now looking back, I realize it was middle class and we were pretty lucky and blessed. But as a kid, it did not feel that way. But my upbringing, I have my grandma on my mom's side. She immigrated here from Mexico, and then aside from that, the rest of the family is all Hispanic.
Interesting. Okay. So, how do you feel like your identity, such as like your race, gender, etc., has kind of impacted your experience in the field?
With me personally, I kind of use when people say I can't, I kind of use that as a big motivating factor.
Mm-hmm.
And so, where I grew up in New Mexico, they are, statistically speaking, are very low nationally in many different things. So, for instance, like I think teen pregnancy is the highest in New Mexico. We also have one of the highest dropout rates of high school. And then there was a few others in there. And so for me, it was kind of like a personal challenge to be able to overcome
Mm-hmm.
the stigma, so to say, and those statistics, and be able to, graduate high school, graduate from college, and not succumb to many of the challenges that we see in that environment. And so I kind of just use that to excel myself forward.
Okay, gotcha. So, do you feel like because of your identity and background, that you have some strengths and sources of pride that kind of come from that? Like, especially kind of how you had detailed when you're told you can't do something.
Mm-hmm. I would say so. It's kind of nice moving here. From New Mexico, it's different. Definitely a cultural shift in some aspects. Even the verbiage is a little bit different. Like some of the different words people use, it's kind of interesting. But I feel that my background has definitely helped. And again, because I see, you know, myself at my age, still kind of making advances, giving my background where I came from, it gives me a huge sense of pride, both personally and in a familial sense as well.
I totally get that. Do you feel comfortable kind of explaining a time that you experienced a sense of bias due to your background and where you come from?
Um, Fortunately, I haven't really directly experienced bias. Now, I'm not saying it hasn't been there. I also have kind of grown up a little bit naive to a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not sure if it has played a role or not. I really hope it hasn't. But the only thing I can really think of is people making assumptions at times, but I don't think it's really impacted me personally in a larger sense. For instance, I get a lot of assumptions that, unfortunately, even though my family I can't speak Spanish, and so I think in some aspects that's played a role in some cases. But aside from that, I really haven't seen people accept. If anything, I've kind of seen it in my benefit in a way, because sometimes we'll get some Hispanic families that come in and there's an automatic connection that they make, where they just feel like it's not very hard to build rapport, because there is that sense of identity between both parties, where it's like they get that I can understand them and some of their upbringing as well.
Okay. So I know that you mentioned your family came here from Mexico, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know that this is a kind of big thing in society right now. So how do you feel society views people who primarily like immigrate?
It's a little bit different for me. I generally have a sense of, it's kind of a neutral stance. From the parties that I've heard in my personal life and also just across social media, it's not so much immigration that people struggle with, it's the way that people do immigrate,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so my grandma came here as a documented person, you know. She immigrated in all the legal ways, and so to me, I don't feel personally affected by other people's opinions because the ones that I have heard, she doesn't fall into that category herself. And so I would have never known that she was even from Mexico had my family not told me. But for me, it is, you know, nothing that I have any kind of personal experiences in, just because of the manner that it happened, and I can't necessarily relate to in that aspect.
Okay, awesome. So I know that you yourself are in the social work field, but putting yourself outside of a social worker's shoes, how do you believe that we can improve experiences for those that kind of came from the same background and identity as you?
Well, I think a big thing would be, you know, I know a lot of the challenges we see is as a people, you know, people wanting to focus on, you know, making things right here. But I feel like if we can help at least with our neighbors and make things right there, then it would kind of have a domino effect. I know they face many challenges, which is why a lot of people tend to immigrate here, um, both legally and, you know, illegally. And so, um, you know, I think being able to help some of those things across borders would not only decrease what's happening, but also help us gain understanding, and hopefully make some actual changes, because this has been going on for decades, where this has been an issue, but there has been no resolution to it other than what we've been doing. And obviously, what we've been doing is not working. So we have to think of things, I think, from another aspect, not just what's illegal versus legal. It's more of a how can we fix things there. And I know our hands are tied in many aspects because that is not our government. There's only so much we can do over there, but I'm sure there's things that we can do, that we're just not doing. America's a very, very powerful, the most powerful place in the world, some would argue. And so the fact that being told that we can't do anything, I don't believe that. You know, I think we have a lot more influence than I think regular citizens believe, and I think that fighting problems at the root of the issue is how we resolve issues.
I definitely like how you phrased that. Thank you. So, just a couple more questions, but how do you feel that professionals in our field can avoid making assumptions by those who come from different backgrounds?
I think it's important to recognize if there is bias, for one. That self-awareness, I think, is key in so many aspects in your own personal journey to recovery, potentially both mentally or any other kind of recovery you're facing. You have to be self-aware before you can make any changes in any kind of aspect of your life. And I think just being able to recognize it and admit it and take that accountability for it is step one. And then step two is just realizing, learning how to empathize. Not everyone has that ability to empathize the way that it really should be. So if you can't empathize and sympathize, really, if it's not too far a stretch to say, like, okay, if this were you in that position in the exact same scenario, how would you feel? And I think if people did that more often, they would be able to think more outside of the box than in a narrow kind of mind state. It's kind of interesting for myself, seeing many sides of the coin, because, you know, I married into a Caucasian family, but was raised with obviously all Hispanic family members, and so, kind of seeing and hearing things from different points of view has been really interesting, especially the last decade or so, of things going on politically in the world, and all the challenges we've been facing the last several years. And so, it's just, I think that if people took a step back and reevaluated their own outlooks in life and tried to walk in somebody else's shoes, so to say, I think that's the best way to really evaluate if a viewpoint is valid or not.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Lastly, do you think that there's any time specifically that your identity has influenced the experiences you have or have not gone through at all?
Probably, I would imagine so. Again, I think because it's kind of interesting, growing up in New Mexico, because of the way that I look, people assumed that I was of white background, and then when I came here, people assumed that I was Spanish background, and so it's kind of interesting. But I think in both places I have always been treated with respect. I've always been my gender has never been an issue either. I've always been got along with the guys, and so, that's never been an issue for me. If anything, sometimes there's been cases where I've questioned if it has played a role negatively, but really that was my own thoughts versus having anything solid to really justify or give evidence to it. But like I said, fortunately I haven't had experiences of the sort where I feel like my background, my culture has had any kind of negative impacts, any kind of aspect of my life. But I know there are people out there that can't say the same things, but I'm a person that if you tell me I can't, then I'm gonna go harder, and so I think that also plays a role in not seeing any issues and always trying to rise above the challenge. So that's just me, though.
Well, thank you so much. Do you have any additions or anything else you'd like to say before we end our interview?
No, I just think that it's important, when people say you can't, show them how you can, and I always live by the ideal that, success is the best revenge, and so when people make you feel less than because of who you are or where you come from, show them that they're wrong.
Okay, well, thank you for taking the time to talk with me.
Yeah, of course, thank you.